Okay, welcome to this live session. And thank you very much for attending. My name is Sage Pierce-Higgins. I'm an instructor with TTP, and I'm very happy to be here presenting an hour of in-depth, well, I hopefully packed information and useful study equipment for the GMAT. So I've titled this How to Study Effectively for the GMAT Focus, and whether or not you're studying on your own or studying with one of our live courses. By the way, I should get that plug in early. There are live courses you can sign up for with TTP, and hopefully I'll show you kind of how our teaching is going to work. But let's make the most of our hour. We're talking about studying efficiently for the GMAT focus. Now, I know we've got some people at different stages of their study, but the first thing for anybody, in fact, the first thing to think about before you start your study, or even maybe to renew when you're going through a difficult period, is finding your meaning, because you won't study effectively unless you have some kind of purpose. Now, that might sound obvious. Yes, you're probably taking GMAT because you need to get it for your business school application or whatever other program you're applying for. But that's not quite enough, because I know from teaching many things that when somebody has to do something, they're generally less enthusiastic than if they want to do something. And we can shift our focus a little bit by answering a couple of simple questions. First of all, what is the GMAT testing? Go on, hit me in the chat window. Let's have a couple of answers to this. What skills is the GMAT testing? Okay, I'm reading the chat here. Yeah, critical thinking is a word that's coming up, or a phrase. Yeah, Carson, I totally agree. Something's difficult and stressful. I can see, wait, can I just request that you go on mute? Somebody, I can hear this, maybe just a little step. So let me see if I can address that. But yeah, definitely there's something about stress in this exam. It's definitely a stressful experience for most of us. But what kind of stress is that? Perhaps, Carson, you can elaborate a little bit more in the chat window. And I can see some more messages coming in. Great. Yeah. Reasoning skills, quantum verbal reasoning, how fast you can crunch numbers. Yeah. And actually, it's not just testing one thing. It's important to note, I think one important thing is testing a sort of base level for your business school skills. Can you read a complicated passage in English and understand it? Can you deal with some quant economics, statistics, or that kind of thing? So there's kind of a base level there. But I would go further, because the word that and time pressure, yeah, I can see that coming in, and stress, working under pressure. These are all useful skills, but doing particularly what? And the word that I would like, or the phrase I would like to gravitate towards, is managerial thinking. Because the kind of decisions that you make, the kind of stress, the kind of maybe actually even like no best solution, but I'm just going to do what I can under limited time availability. That kind of thinking is very much linked to your future at business school and the kind of management positions. If you think about a manager in a situation, they have to make quick decisions under pressure. They might not be perfect. And their job is really to just do the best they can with those limited resources. And also creativity is rewarded for this. So that might sound a little, when we talk about logic and reasoning, but actually I hope to convince you today that there's a good creative element to this test as well. So we've seen what's the GMAT testing. So kind of what's the point of it leads on from that hopefully this is an exam not just to get you into business school, but to actually equip you or start to equip you with some of those important skills. Now, I know this is very brief, but this is such an important psychological foundation for your studies, because I've seen so many students who just don't want to be there. And if you don't want to be there, then all your organization, all your course fees, all your time, even it can just be really hard to even find time in the week. And if you don't want to do it, it's going to be even harder. So you can work on that motivation. Now, the next step I want to deal with is realistic study, something I'm going to call fast study. And I maybe should have warned you at the beginning of this session. I hope you've brought your thinking caps, because what I want to do with you today is to do a little bit of actual GMAT study. I think that's the best way I can get my points across and to make this most useful. So I hope you're ready. I'm going to give you 4 questions from the quant section. So let's just prepare ourselves, even keeping that in mind. This is not about being perfect. This is not about being the star. In fact, you're probably here because you want to learn something. So hopefully there are going to be some moments of learning opportunity. But please do prepare yourself. Make sure you have a piece of paper. And I would actually recommend that you take your paper and you divide it into 4 sections. Divide it into quarters, either this way or this way, giving yourself space to answer 4 quant questions. So if anybody has any questions just before we start, please do say something in the chat window. But I really do hope you participate in this. I know some people maybe just sort of have this on in the background, but don't be that student. Don't just be an observer. Please do participate. And this is all hopefully in good humor. And your results will not be published anyway. Don't worry. So without further ado, I'm going to put a timer on. For regular timing, we're talking about 8 minutes if we're talking about the quant section. So that's 2 minutes per question. I'm going to give you 4 questions, a variety of topics. I hope to surprise you a little bit. And I will hope to hear 4 answers in the private chat. Actually, that would be the best way. I think if you're familiar with Zoom, you can send me a private chat message. After you've finished all 4 questions, I'll give you a kind of time warning. Okay, so here we go. Here are 4 questions taken from our TTP course.
يلا ايوه.
Okay, if you've just arrived, we're in the middle of doing these 4 questions. So please grab a pencil and paper and do your best to answer these 4 questions. Okay, so that's just about halfway. Keep going, please.
Six and 5 square minus. Okay, that's less than a minute left. Okay, so that's just about time up. So please send me a private message through the chat with your 4 answers. And if you didn't finish it, that's fine. I'm here to support you. I'm not here to make your life too hard, but a bit of a challenge is a good thing. So please let me know your answers first of all. Thanks, Samantha. Well done. Good, good. So great. We're going to just have a couple of things to learn. Yeah, Irvin, I think that last question was a little, but we'll find out. Okay, good. Keep those answers coming through. Let me just give you another few seconds. Don't be shy. If we want to put some question marks, that's okay. This is another thing about studying. You've got to pitch up. You've got to participate. I know, even if it's going to be a bit uncomfortable. So hopefully I'm going to have a few more answers coming through, even if they're incomplete. Yes, Seita, did you have time for the last 2 questions?
I'm sorry. Hello. Hi. Can you hear me?
Oh yeah, I can. Yeah.
Okay. I was just wondering, I cannot see anybody sharing in the chat or
Because they're sharing with me directly. This is a direct message. You can
okay. I see. Sorry, I joined late.
That's cool. That's cool. If you're unfamiliar with Zoom, you can send me a private message by selecting my name instead of everyone in the meeting, and that's kind of good. It seems that yes, that's the idea. So secret messages to send me your
Wonderful.
answers. Good. Thank you, Dua. Thank you. Yeah, and that's okay if you ran out of time. I designed this set to be somewhat challenging, and probably time was a little bit of an issue. So look, I know you're probably bursting to know the answers, so let's get to them. Here are the correct answers. And just a moment of reflection. So I'm going to give some explanations to these questions, but I do want to emphasize this is what I call fast practice. This is the realistic stuff. This was a mini test that you just participated in. And if it went well, well, hooray. If it went badly, that's okay as well, because there's good stuff to learn. And in fact, I love learning lots of things. And I know from experience that some realistic experience of whatever it is you're doing is a very important component in your study. So let's keep it in the chat. In fact, let's move to the public chat, because I'm sure your participants here, your colleagues or classmates will want to know about your experience as well. And please let me know, how did that feel? How was your time management? Did you run out of time? Did you overrun on some questions? And interestingly, maybe, or unexpectedly perhaps, how tidy was your writing? Can you look down at your page and see, were you hurriedly scribbling or were you writing in a more organized way? So please, I'd love to hear some feedback on this, and I'm glad there's so many people here today. So let's keep this to the chat window. And great, Vaipo, if I'm saying your name correct, I'm sure everyone else will love to hear about that as well. Yeah, silly mistakes are going to hold us back. So let's move this to the public chat window, if possible, please. Alyssa, thank you. I'm glad somebody shared that, because it is anxiety-inducing. Absolutely, it's designed to be. You're the manager here. You've got to make the tough decisions, and of course there are going to be strategies. I'm going to show you some in a minute, but actually just getting used to that slightly uncomfortable, anxious feeling is an important part of this. So nothing reduces fear like just some gentle exposure to whatever it is we're afraid of. Good time management. Yeah, I can see that was some. Yeah, Irvin, I'm actually going to say later that there's no such thing as a silly mistake. You maybe come back to that with me on that one, but maybe related to number 3, I'm guessing. Chaotic scrap work is the cause of many, many mistakes. Good. Yeah, and Dua, that's a very good observation, like a little bit more subtle about your taking shortcuts. We're going to see, hopefully, making that work for you a little bit more. Good, good. Thank you for all these comments. Yeah, excellent. So just before we move on to the next step, which is going to be slow study, I just want to emphasize that I love learning lots of things. In fact, my enjoyment of the GMAT, if it sounds a little bit strange, I do really like this test. I really like these questions because I enjoy learning things. And you might see behind me, I don't know if you can see in my video, I've got a piano there as well, and I teach music, I teach piano. And I apply the same kind of thought process. If I'm teaching someone piano, we're going to do some realistic performance before they play on stage. We're going to give them some of that fast study. And we're also going to do some of this slow study, some of this exploration, this kind of thoughtful examination. And you might have guessed this is probably going to take longer than doing the questions themselves. But let's apply that. Let's look in detail at these questions and do some slow study. So today it's going to be a bit more of a sort of demonstration, because there's such a big crowd here. I don't think I can get everyone involved over the microphone. But I want to show you some of the strategies that I would encourage you to apply to these problems. So one thing is that in this one, this is even categorizing it. Oh, it's one of those exponent questions. Yeah, this is the kind of question where I kind of have to do my homework. This is probably some math stuff I haven't done since high school. It's something which I have maybe not seen for a little while. And it's something which will respond very well to some detailed practice. Wait, did I get the questions in the wrong order here? Excuse me. Oh, no, I've got them in the right one. Okay, so this is, yeah, one of those exponent questions, but even so, there are shortcuts available, because if you looked at this and you thought, I have no idea where to start, we would do worse than just rearranging this. If we're looking for n equals, well, can we put the equation kind of n equals something? And we can rearrange it to be 470 over 5 to the power of 9 plus 1 over 5 to the 6 plus 1 over 5 to the 7 plus 1 over 5 to the 8. Now, that is not a huge amount of work I've done there, but I've already shown that one of those answers is incorrect. Maybe somebody can point out which answer must be incorrect. And Alyssa, yeah, this session is being recorded. I believe it'll go out on YouTube in a few days' time. Perhaps you can see already this answer down here cannot be correct because, wait a minute, n equals that plus some more things. So it might seem like a very marginal point, but I've just improved my chances of guessing on a question which may be more or less impossible for me. If I don't know how to do it, that may be all I can do, and I can move on. And I would encourage you to look out for that in your GMAT questions, that there's almost always some opportunity to do some elimination. However, let me demo how to deal with this. We have some exponents, and we're adding these exponents together. So there are a bunch of rules, and we'd go through them in a live course. But here, the key is if I'm adding exponents together, or adding sort of exponent terms together, I want to use some kind of factorization. So what can I factorize here? I could factorize 5 to the power of 6. I can say, okay, n equals 1 over 5 to the power of 6. Let's put that into a factorized form. Well, actually, I'm going to deal with the second term is just 1 because I've got 5 to the power of 6. And this is going to be 1 over 5 if I know my exponent rules, and 1 over 5 squared. And I'll deal with that difficult first one, 470 over 5 to the power of 3. So this is knowing that when I multiply exponents together, I'm going to add them. That should make 9 there. So this is factorizing my exponents. But I actually don't think this is the easiest way, because you're going to sort of see what's going to happen in a moment. I've still got a bunch of fractions that I need to kind of add together somehow. So actually, the factorized form that I'm going to go for is n equals 1 over 5 to the power of 9, pulling out the extra 5 to the power of 3, and I'm going to revise this. This is going to be 470 plus 1 over, or rather 5 to the power of 3, because that's going to cancel out to make 5 to the power of 6, plus 5 squared plus 5. Now, the reason I've done that is because now I've got these numbers in a form that I can add them together. And if I'm good with my my knowledge of exponents, I'll know that 5 cubed is 125. This is 25. And if I add them together, I'm going to get n is equal to 1 over 5 to the power of 9 multiplied by 625. And this is some of like my shortcuts that I really want to prepare for. I really do want to know that 625, just to recognize it, oh, I know that, that's 5 to the power of 4. And therefore, n is going to be, let's simplify this here, n is going to be 5 to the power of 4 over 5 to the power of 9, and that's going to cancel out to make 5 to the power of 5, answer D. Phew, there seems like quite a lot of legwork there. And this is some of that kind of algebra or some of that kind of high school math that you may have forgotten and may need to revise. So it's perhaps that kind of category, but it's not the only way. In fact, let's just have a 30 seconds of feedback in the chat window. First of all, how did you think of my explanation? Was that okay for you? Or did you find another way? Is there something a little easier that you did? Yeah, and I want to emphasize there is more than one strategy. These questions are designed in light of that managerial thinking. They have more than one strategy. And I think one way, which may have been easier than what I showed, would be to just multiply both sides of the equation by 5 to the power of 9. That would get rid of all the fractions and might actually make things a little easier to work with. Yeah, there you go. Look, if I can say your name right, Arthur said, that is a good point there. Yeah, I reckon that may have been easier. So on a kind of slightly accelerated timeline, we are exploring this problem. We saw some elimination and we saw some factorizing exponents. Let's have a look at the next one. Okay, so here, there's a definite strategy which I would recommend for this. And it's not a strategy of saying the item is price X and then it goes up to 1.2x. That may be autopilot for many people to make some kind of equation. And actually, to be fair, that's not too bad. If that's what you did, I'm pretty sure that, or if you're comfortable with that, I'm pretty sure you could do that in a couple of minutes. However, if you find that hard, if you find algebra turning it into an equation difficult, fear not. I think there is an easy way. And Shannon, fantastic. You are on the board today. Let's just pick an example because we don't actually know how much this item costs. In fact, scanning through the problem, that's a good principle of solving problems, to just take a kind of brief look at the whole thing, including the answers. The answers are percentages. Everything is percentages. Wait a minute. Is this an expensive item? Is it $1? Is it $50? It doesn't matter. The answer should be the same, whatever the price is. So here, I think this is both safer, easier, and faster to pick an example. And I like that idea that we could say that the item is $100. Why 100? Because percentages are so easy to work with 100. So 100 goes up to $120. And this becomes now a question of me not messing it up. So this, for I think many people in the room would be in that category of like, I can do this, just don't drop the ball. The resulting value was then marked up another 10%. Now, to do 10%, I would just think of 1/10. This is a very convenient way of dealing with percentages. 1/10 of 120 is 12, so it goes up to 132. That kind of, rather than dealing with decimals, to think what I would call as percent benchmarks. This is how I like to deal with percentages, taking 10% or taking 1% and working it. I can almost do it in my head when I use convenient benchmarks. Now, the item was marked down 50%. So wait a minute, that's just half price. So let's not mess it up. Half of 130 is 65. So it's going to be 66 in total. And then it was marked down another 50%, taking it to 33. So the final price of the item, that's going to be $33, is what percent of the original price? What was my original price? Was 100. So $33 is 33% of 100, if I can circle the right answer. Answer choice D. Okay, so picking examples, this is definitely our friend, and I reckon this is easier than making an equation. Any comments on that? Anybody make an equation? Anybody run into trouble? Let's have a moment of reflection. Yeah, not bad at all, Mohammed. Yeah, like that would work. I reckon you're doing just slightly more work than you need to by putting everything over 100. But you'll see a lot of things cancelling out. Carson Wood, let me leave that for you to do. You could have it as X, and then going up 20% is multiplying it by 1.2 or multiplying it by 120 over 100, same difference. And then each of these changes is going to be multiplying it by some other fractional decimal, and you'll see that lots of things cancel out, and it's definitely going to be harder and probably take more time. So easy to do. But Anjali, I don't think there's such thing as a silly mistake. And maybe if I know that I'm in a panic, I could write original next to my 100. That's the kind of safety mechanism I might think about building in to my strategies, that I want to be super clear on my paper. And you can see even as I was turning the corner and going sort of down here, I thought, this isn't as clear as I want it to be. I would want to have it on my paper something so clear that there was a very small chance of me messing it up. And Sierra, good, oh great, you're in good company. So yeah, paperwork is often the answer to, or clear paperwork is the answer to some of those silly mistakes. Okay, the next one, here we go. Now this one, I think this is a very interesting question because it's quite hidden what it is all about. So I'm guessing that many people in this room found this probably the hardest in the set, perhaps, or certainly more challenging than some of the first couple. But fear not. Remember, look at the answer choices. There's almost always some opportunity to eliminate. If you didn't do that already, let me just ask you to look at those answers and see if you can spot anything. Are there any answers that it cannot be? Okay, so we've got n and m, these two positive integers. Is that important somehow? We take part of n and we take half of m, so we sort of 9/10, 90% of n and half of m, and it adds up to 8.1. So wait a minute. So if I take the whole of n and the whole of m, then can I say anything about that? Right. It can't actually, it certainly can't be 4, and it certainly can't be 6. And I'd say 9 is looking kind of suspicious because we are missing half of m, but I wouldn't rule out 9 at the moment. But look, here we've got it. I've eliminated 2 out of 5 answers because I know that the answer must be higher than 8.1. Now, it seems like a marginal gain, but remember, this is an adaptive test. Remember, it's going to give you harder questions if you get questions right. So you will always see questions that you do not know how to solve. That is just one of the rules of the GMAT. And we need to prepare for that. We need to prepare for guessing opportunities. So here's one, and eliminating some of the answers. Oh, sorry, you're absolutely right, Shannon. I think, fantastic. Look, I'm learning something here. It can't be 9 because if it was 9, then m would work out as 0. Although, wait a minute, could it? I'd have to think about that a little bit more. But yes, I'm willing to go with you that I would be certainly looking to guess one of these answers if I was using my plan B there. However, I said this is a hidden topic because yeah, they're positive integers. Thank you. Oh, fantastic. This is just the class I want. That kind of involvement, I'm very glad to see it. So thank you. So I said hidden topics. And one thing I could do to this equation, and I might do this a little on instinct, is to think, can I just get rid of these decimals? And multiplying both sides by 10 will give me 9n and 5m equals 81. Now, this is, I think, just going to be a little easier to deal with because I've got integers rather than decimals. But there's another question I would have in my mind here, which is, wait a minute, how can I even extract n and m? I can't factorize. I've only got one equation. Yeah, I must have to fall back on this idea that they're positive integers. So there must be only one combination of n and m, which is going to work for this question. And I'd say that's the hidden topic, a topic which comes up reasonably often in the GMAT, which is kind of combining numbers. Which combination of these numbers is going to add to 81? And I could do this by thinking of the multiples. If m is a positive integer, it's going to be multiples of 5. So if m is 1, it's 5. If m is 2, this is 10, 15, 20, etc. The 5 times table. And I can see that, yeah, Shannon, you are on the ball here. Excellent. The units digit is going to be a 5 or a 0, which means that the multiples of 9, if n is 1, it's going to be 9. If n is 2, 18, 27, 36, 45, etc. But we must have these 2 units digits ending in a 1. And units digits are our friend in this kind of combining numbers type question. So we could have a 5 with a 6 or a 0 with a 1. I can't see a 1 down here, but we could have, wait a minute, a 5 with a 6. So which 5 is it going to be to add up? It's going to be 45 for this m part and 36 for the n part. And I believe that's going to add up together to make 81. So a bit of arithmetic there. Remember, there's no calculator for this part of the test. So those are my 2 numbers. And I just have to not mess up the last step. This is going to be 36. So n is going to work out as 4 and m is going to work out as 9. And that gives me the answer 13. And I can honestly say that the first time I did this question, I got to that answer and I thought, I'm not totally sure what happened there, but I just need to answer and move on. I would love to check my answer and get extra sure, but usually, and this is very, very common, usually I'm willing to answer when I'm kind of 90% certain. That kind of risk-taking when I'm not 100% sure is my normal experience of the GMAT. And that can often surprise beginners of the GMAT, that they think, oh, I can kind of knock every question dead and be totally sure. No, unfortunately you can't. It's very easy to kind of fall into that trap, but getting comfortable with a level of risk is very important for this exam. So here we go. I showed you a combining numbers, maybe a slightly more obscure topic, a slightly higher level topic, and thinking of units digits is the way to deal with it here. Good, Nish. Yeah, so that looks like you're doing some sort of similar, okay, a little bit more algebra there. Yeah, that's another avenue to take. And yeah, worth exploring. Okay, so we've seen this slower study, and this exploring problems is often about finding different ways to solve the same problem. And that's kind of what I want to show you with the last one here, that we've got something about rates, and we've got something about speeds, and this is very tempting to write some kind of equation, which is actually, if anyone did that, you're going to end up with a quadratic, which may or may not be your strength. And I would say that actually, for most of us, that is not an easy way to solve this question. Again, there's a lot of flexibility here. And if you're an algebra whiz, then solving it by a quadratic equation is doable. But there's a bigger hint. These answer choices, these are actually quite easy numbers to work with. So my preferred way to deal with rates, if I'm thinking of 6 miles per hour, is actually the same way as some other part of math. If you think about this, really means 6 miles in 1 hour. And 6 miles in 1 hour is actually, well, maybe somebody can see where I'm going here. The clue's in the name. A rate is the same as, maybe someone else has made this connection before. A rate is the same as a ratio. So this is 6 miles to 1 hour. And that's the same as saying I'm going 60 miles to 10 hours. So I can solve a lot of these questions without really dealing with any complicated math. And this is good news. If you don't like some of the complicated math, great, because you don't need to do a lot of it. If you do like the complicated math, it also can be a win because you can get greater speed and flexibility. So looking at those answer choices, I can see that 6 miles per hour would take him 10 hours. I can see that 10 miles an hour would take him 6 hours. 12 miles an hour would take him 5 hours. 15 miles an hour would take him 4 hours. And 18 miles an hour, what's that going to be? That's going to be like 3 hours and a third. Is that correct? I've done that? 3 and a third hours. So I can look at the answers and I can see that the numbers are quite easy to work with. And once I see that, I can see, wait a minute, if he had ridden his bike 2 miles per hour faster than he actually did, then he would have arrived at the store 1 hour earlier. So wait a minute. So let's think about some of these answers. If he rode it at 6 miles an hour, he got 10 hours. If he rode it at 8 miles an hour, would it be 9 hours? I don't think so. That's not looking like an easy integer to work with. But I can go through and I can see that 10 miles an hour in 6 hours, going 2 miles an hour faster means that he's going to be going at 12 miles per hour. And then therefore answer choice B is the correct one. 10 miles an hour in 6 hours, or he goes a little bit faster, he goes 12 miles an hour, he gets there 1 hour faster. So this is a strategy I would call testing the answer choices. And a little bit of feedback, did anyone use that for this question? Good. Okay. So yeah, and there's nothing wrong with doing the algebra. That can work, but I would encourage anyone to evaluate different opportunities, because that's actually the only way to learn, is to think, what alternatives are there? And yes, you may conclude that algebra is the best way for you, but I would suggest that for this question particularly, look how kind of simple it was with those numbers to work. Okay, so this is, I would say, the backbone of our learning. As well as having that realistic experience, we have done a bit of exploring problems. And to summarize, we saw a few different strategies. We started thinking about these. In fact, this is where you can be very kind of gritty and tenacious, and maybe even not check the answer explanations until you've had a go at solving these yourself. But in terms of good learning, the next step is also a vital one. Name your strategies, because I know that the GMAT is not the only thing going on in your life. I know that you're likely, well, maybe it is, but that's kind of a minority. You're probably going to work, you're probably dealing with other issues and maybe even studying other things. So to make your study as memorable as possible, name your strategies. Just as when I'm working with a team, I name the team members around me. And when I have that, I have a lot easier access and a lot easier relationship with those people. So we name people, we can also name strategies. And here are some of the strategies that we named. We saw elimination, a very important plan B for those harder questions. We saw testing the answers. That can often provide a shortcut rather than doing some heavier algebra. We can pick examples, again, similarly, making our life a little bit easier. Percent benchmarks, that is very useful for saving some time, dealing with 50% as a half or 10% as a tenth, etc. Combining numbers, a little smaller of a topic, but looking at those units, digits helped us, and then factorizing some exponents. So cool, I can just see some questions coming in the chat window. Let me just take a moment to address them. Yeah, Dua, that's a really good point. And let me just go back to the questions and address that. Dua, I said there was a really good question about, where was it? About these, about scanning the questions rather than jumping into a strategy. Now, I can't give you a simple answer. And I know that's annoying, but let me link it back to that management thinking. There's no formula for being a good manager. It's more about principles. So I would say usually I scan the question. I take in the whole question with a wide view before I pick a strategy. And I do this because I know that the test is testing my ability to choose strategies, and that often the first strategy that I think of may not be the most efficient one. However, I would make exceptions. If, for example, in this one, the first question, if I can see immediately that I could solve that equation, then yeah, I might not even scan the answer choices. Well, I probably would scan them or at least glance at them, but I would probably dive into thinking, okay, wow, I've got to factorize here. I think I can do that. It seems to work all right. I'm pretty confident that I can get there. However, with a wordier problem here or here, I would maybe take a little bit more time to scan through the question, knowing that I'll probably need to come back and read it because there's just too much information to memorize on the first read. And I may have to make some notes on my paper, but I probably wouldn't jump into doing algebra. And maybe that's something which I often work on with my students, is that I can see that they tend to sort of jump to algebra, which is pretty good if you want to do quite well on the GMAT. You know, if you want to get a kind of, you know, something like a 600 or maybe even getting towards a 650, you can cope with basically just doing algebra. But if you want to go higher, I'm pretty convinced that the test is actually set up to catch the algebra whizzes out, and they will give you harder and harder questions and ones which will just not be possible to solve with algebra in 2 minutes. So it's a big debate about when to use algebra and when to try other strategies. But given that most of us have such a heavy bias, we've done algebra at high school for years and years and years, and maybe aren't so used to multi-choice tests, exploring those alternative possibilities is something which is very valuable for most students. I hope that answers your question. Okay, so thinking about, we talked about naming strategies so that when I see these questions, I can recognize, okay, easy answers I might be able to eliminate. Oh, it's a combination, combining questions, or it's a rates problem. Oh, look at those easy numbers in the answers. Perhaps I can test them, etc. But naming my strategies isn't the end of the story, because I am not a computer. Now, it seems funny that I need to say that, but I reckon a lot of us have this idea that we're going to save information, that we kind of upload information into our brain and then it's just kind of there. Well, no. The GMAT is a skill, and practicing or improving at a skill is a question of practice, of doing a little bit each day, of coming back, of being prepared to do the same questions again and again. Now, that might sound a little bit kind of even boring, and perhaps it is sometimes. But if you got some questions here wrong, I would highly recommend that, what's a good timeline? Maybe not tomorrow, that's kind of soon, but like in 2 or 4 days, something like that, that you come back and just have another go at these questions. So let me leave them on the screen. If you want to take a screenshot here, you're absolutely welcome to take these questions home, try them again. Yeah, like 2 or 4 days, I reckon maybe a week is a sort of outer limit, because most of us by a week's time have kind of forgotten new things. And some kind of sweet spot between 2 days and a week, I reckon, will help us activate the learning that we had. And good point, Shannon. So yeah, these questions are, I think they're all medium difficulty in the TTP course. So I'd say that this one, number 3, perhaps is a hard question, and perhaps number 2 is, no, I think, yeah, they're all perhaps, yeah, 3 hard and the other are medium questions. So coming back to do questions that you've done before is a great way to check your learning. And if anyone's been doing that, I know it's very humbling, because you come back, and by the way, here are the answers if you want to save that as well. You come back and you very often make the same mistake again. And you just realize, oh, I'm not a computer. I don't save information. I have to carefully and patiently change some of my habits in order to change my results. So here you go on the screen. You can save this as well. In fact, if you're saving, I would say both with and without the answers, just for ease of checking. And that opens a whole door to being quite organized in our studies. Reviewing and redoing questions, so vital, probably more useful to redo old questions than to do new ones. Although, again, counterintuitively, I think that many of us have this idea that we don't have time to redo questions. We've got to go and do a bunch of new questions. And I would like to kind of gently challenge that approach. With my students in classes and also in tutoring, I often use a review log like this. And this really is designed for you to be a bit of your own teacher. This is pretty crude, it's pretty simple. You can set something like this up on Excel. In fact, I often, if they're official questions or from an official practice test, finding them on GMAT Club can be a kind of useful little kind of hack. And this is actually a real log that one of my students filled in recently. This is from a practice test, and getting her to really think about, yeah, why she picked these out, even like it might be something simple like she got it wrong, but it's an unfamiliar topic. And then this idea of clues is one I like a lot. And you've heard me mentioning that. Clues as in percentages in the stem, or looking at the answer choices. This can really help us activate some of our strategies, and then thinking about strategies. In fact, yeah, there's a few blanks there. Maybe should help her complete this. But also look, guessing opportunities. Plan B is always on the table. And then thinking of your takeaways and some of those things to use in the future. So this is about making your study as organized and making sure that you are reinforcing things and giving your brain time to develop. It's more like, yeah, more like growing a plant. You just need to keep watering it each day. The plant is never kind of finished. And the same, unfortunately, can be said for our GMAT studies. We can keep getting better. And there's a whole discussion there about, yes, when to book your exam, when are you ready for the test, what are your targets, etc. And I look forward to maybe some of those conversations in the future. So I'll be around for a few minutes for any questions that anybody has. But otherwise, thank you very much for attending. And I hope to see you in the future. So yeah, I'll be here for a few months. Thanks. Very nice to meet you all. If you have any questions, please send me a message.